Alright everybody, welcome back to a brand new video. Today we're reacting and having a discussion from a video from Ike the Bard. So the video will be linked in the description. The title is Dead by Daylight's main issue is getting worse. So I'm curious to kind of hear about what the main issue is. I think that DBD is a game that is riddled with many issues, and have spoken extensively about those issues in the past, which hopefully will... I think I'm going to have to make a playlist for these things just to make things a little more organized for you guys, but either way, we're going to get into it. And if you want to watch the original video, once again, it'll be linked in the description. Alright, so let's get into it.
To the chase-oriented game we have today. However, the direction the game is currently heading with the announcement of new changes to Survivor gameplay has me a little worried because this game should always be killer-sided. That's right, I said it. It needs to be killer-sided. And before you go down to the dislike button,
I'm really glad that somebody actually said it and somebody's actually speaking some facts around here. And the reason I say that is for a myriad of reasons, and I'm going to hopefully help you guys understand like how that works, okay? So, number one, killer side is objectively, on paper, the more powerful side. And I mean in a literal sense. Killers have powers, abilities, things that make them unique. You can take any killer and you be able to figure out what their abilities are, right? For example, let's take a killer like Freddy. What is his ability? Right? He's supposed to be a dream demon. And, well, currently, obviously, we're going to talk about currently with the reworks. Currently, he's able to launch a snare on the ground to slow you down. And he's also able to place down, pallets that he can detonate to deal damage, right? And teleport. Simple. Let's take another character. Completely different side of the spectrum. Let's say we take Artist, who can launch birds at range or up close, so it can deal damage to people. If people are affected, if the survivors are affected by the crows that she launches, she can actually deal damage to them from across the map. And so on and so forth. Just to keep things, objective here. Killers have literal powers. Some can teleport, some can go through tunnels, some can run fast, dash, things like that. That is sort of what you expect with killer. That's the entire point. And then we take into account that now survivors are pretty much identical in what they're capable of doing. But the only difference is that they look different. Like it's sort of wearing skins, basically, like anything else. So that is already step one. A game where you're facing a powerful, creature, killer, like something like that, like from a movie even, like from our favorite licenses, like Halloween, Friday the 13th, if you wanted, if they ever add that. But we're just gonna throw it out there, just a different examples. If we're going against a killer, you expect them to be powerful. You expect them to be a threat. And DBD unfortunately doesn't have that, but keeping in mind here, objectively, we take into account other characters and other ASIMs. Let's talk about Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Let's talk about Friday the 13th. Though, especially Friday the 13th, I would say is very good in terms of trying to make Jason feel strong and feel, fun and playable and actually interesting to go up against. Especially with just like the way that he's able to sort of build up rage, the way he was able to break down walls, kind of walk through them when he was in rage mode and stuff like that. Felt very threatening. He would break down windows and things like that. Like he was doing different things to try to go after them. But you knew full well that despite the fact you could fight back, you still knew that if you were playing as Jason, you would be able to do something. Like you would still feel powerful. And that's the idea that I'm trying to kind of get at. Objectively speaking, from the very concept of going against a like literal like eldritch monsters, like even like Dredge, you would expect them to be strong. You would expect them to be able to do the impossible in that sense. Even Singularity as an example, he can literally teleport to you. Like these are things that should be considered powerful and things that should be considered a threat. And I completely agree that it should be killer-sided because of that mere concept. You're literally picking the side that has powers, like that literally has abilities, compared to just regular people walking around the map and touching machines. It just objectively makes the most sense. But for some reason, they're not really balancing around that. And with the next update that they're going to be putting out, I fully expect that they're not going to follow that logic, and they're going to try to make the survivor side even stronger than it already is.
Button or the comment section to tell me I'm wrong. Just give me a chance to explain myself. What separates horror from any other genre is the big power difference between the villain and the protagonist. The killer is always stronger, faster, and sometimes more devious than the main character. The second the killer stops being a threat, the entire thing falls apart. Horror only works when the threat is real. Think about it. How pathetic would it be if Michael Myers got beat in a fist fight against the first character he went against? Like that one scene in Halloween Kills when the whole town kicks the shit out of Michael. Imagine the movie ended right there. Like,
to be fair, I do see a lot of people that criticize that scene in the movie as well, because it took away the fear factor. It took away the strength that Michael has, and it took away, for lack of a better term, the aura, I guess you could say, the aura, of Michael, right? Because he is supposed to be an unstoppable threat, and I do think that at the beginning of DBD, that was the idea. Like, you wanted the killers to be scary, you wanted the maps to be dark, so that they are able to hide and kind of mimic that movie like feel. But I know that it's obviously evolved to be different. It's obviously evolved to be more than that. Obviously, like he has mentioned in the beginning of the video, it's evolved to be more of like a cat and mouse, like chase focused game, which I find enjoyable. I personally find it enjoyable to focus on chasing people down, trying to counter their loops, trying to outsmart them in those kinds of ways. I enjoy that. I enjoy also learning abilities and learning powers of my favorite licenses, like Chucky, like Ghostface, like Freddy, like Michael Myers, like anybody that's got like a name, like even Pyramid Head as a Silent Hill fan. Like that to me was the most engaging aspect, and I do think that trying to make the survivor side like incredibly strong is where you start to lose people, because people watch those movies and see those characters and understand that at the end of the day, like they're still going to be more powerful because they're supposed to be the villain, and in these movies they're usually the ones that come out on top. It takes away a lot of the magic, especially when you see like Michael getting beat up for no reason.
Like if that was the first scene and then the movie ended, like that would be a joke. Or like if Ellen Ripley roundhouse kicked the xenomorph in the face and it just ran away in the first minute of the movie. That's not horror. That's a parody. That's scary movie. Horror is about the imbalance and how everyday people can overcome that imbalance. Every chase should feel like the final act in a slasher film, where the last survivor is making a desperate attempt to escape. Shout out to Sidney Prescott for being the best loop I've ever seen in a horror movie.
I completely agree with that. 100, and plus 10 out of 10 for the Scream reference. Absolutely. You're getting a like and a sub from me off of that alone. But anyway, jokes aside, okay? I completely agree with the idea that a chase should feel like that. It should feel like you're really like on the jets trying to get away, and it's supposed to have like that crazy music. And that's the funny part is that they try to mimic that, right? Because you have the terror radius of them looming. You have the chase music. You have like the noise when they get spotted, stuff like that. Like you have all these elements that are taken from the movies, like, and yet chases are disgustingly terrible in the game. Like it doesn't feel a lot like that when they have an exhaustion, giving them a free speed boost, and they fly off, and then that was the end of it, and you're just sitting there. You're just sitting there, and just kind of watching them fly off. Like, you're not going to make it over there unless you're playing, somebody with some mobility. And I'm not completely saying remove exhaustions, but what I'm trying to really get at is that with the current stuff that we have in the game, it doesn't feel like that at all. I don't. If you're playing killer, it just seems like whoever can pop a speed boost the quickest is going to get away, and that's kind of it. You know what I mean? And that applies to any level of play. If you're talking about when you first start out, maybe it's a little bit more like that, but when it comes down to the average players, the high level players, like, it's pretty much the same thing. Like, they just pop a speed boost, they're out of there, that's the end of the chase. It's like, or if you continue to follow them, there's like 100 pallets, they slam down, and then they fly off somewhere else, and then they change another speed boost somehow. And it's just not an interesting gameplay loop for me personally. I don't think that that's a smart move. I think they really should, go back to the drawing board, but let's continue.
But when you try to balance the game, it stops being scary. And I'm not saying there should be an overwhelming imbalance where the survivor dies in every match. I'm talking about trying to balance the asymmetrical. Let's say that the killer, with all perks and add-ons, runs at 100%. If you put them on one side of the scale, each survivor should be 25% in the power scale. One killer equals 4 survivors. Perfectly balanced.
I completely agree with that. And also shout out for the Thanos reference too. But the thing is, right? I want to, hopefully I'm able to kind of give you an idea of what I'm talking about here. But basically what we end up really having in the game is instead of just having the classic, like the idea that he just mentioned, which was what I think would be a fantastic addition, is if we have the killer being at, say, the 100% or whatever have you, but instead we have the I would try to draw it out, but whatever, just to keep it quick. Instead of us having 100% and then 25, 25, 25, and 25 across 4 players, it's 100% supposedly on one end. But then you have 100% here, 100% to the next one, 100% to the next one, 100% to the next one. And then even without teamwork, they're already strong. And then with teamwork, they're even stronger. So it raises up to like 400%. And then the killer still has to keep trying to play catch up to that. And that's sort of like the power imbalance, I would say, within the game, especially when they start to see, the main objective is just do gen, right? Like, as efficiently as possible, do gen. And I know that, it doesn't stay true for every player obviously, because everybody's experience is going to be different when they play the game. But ultimately, when we're talking about here is like, when you are going against teams that are very experienced with communication, it's pretty much completely a wash. There's nothing you can really do against that unless you are extremely well versed in your character that is an S tier. Then there's maybe a fighting chance. But unfortunately, when it comes down to somebody like Trapper or Ghostface, which is even worse, or even Skull Merchant, which is worse than that, it's pretty much as if you just stay at 100, but they all have 100 from base, and there's 4 of them. Because all these survivors can all bring 4 different variations of combinations that potentially could also synergize. They're strong on their own and then even stronger together. And that's not how, in my opinion, that's how it should be, because it takes away that team aspect. That's one thing that I really appreciated about Friday the 13th as a game, was the idea that we had, like, everyone had to work together. Like, somebody could find a part, and they're like, okay, I found the boat part. Okay, I found this other part. Let's both go to the dock and then put the thing together. But one person, it can't hold like a whole item, like more than one item at a time, if I remember correctly. So when somebody found it, they can easily go over there, maybe place it next to there, or they're able to, work together, communicate, and say, hey, I'm going to put the boat part in. I'm going to go check over here in this cabin and try to help out, and they work together, but they can't do it on their own. They don't have a backpack that they could just put all their parts in, all 5 parts, and then run over to a location and then just fly out of the game like how it feels like they do in DBD. I mean, it's insane, honestly. And I think that, on one hand, like, that is a really good thing to have. On the other hand, I also kind of disagree that to some extent, that balancing it is kind of ruining the experience, I would say. But to really add to it even further, I would say, because I agree and I disagree, but I agree in the sense that like they are sort of leaning into the one end being strongest, and it's obviously going to be to the side with the most players, and that unfortunately is just the case. When it comes down to the high level play, and then that's also the glaring issue I would say that is with the game, is that they're trying to balance out like 3 different like variations. You got beginners, you got the intermediates, and then you got the experts, like all in different areas that all have different opinions and different perspectives and different obviously all different experiences, because they're experiencing a different DBD because of that MMR system, and maybe removing it could potentially like help equal it out, you know what I mean? Maybe make it a little bit more casual for everybody else, and then we can they can kind of relieve some of the focus of trying to create playlists or trying to create new modes that are just going to be ineffective, especially with queue time. As you already know, queue time is not the game's strong suit, even though there's like tons of players, but like it for some reason it seems to split really heavily for some reason. It's a lot of ideas, and it's a lot to explain, and I hope a lot of this makes sense. I really do hope it does make a lot of sense.
For survivors, perfectly balanced, as all things should be. In the game's current state, a good team of 4 survivors would be an even match to any killer. And as every killer may knows, the biggest weakness to any killer, no matter how strong it is a good cohesive team. I've gone against some Swift that have...
Thank you. I'm glad somebody said it. The biggest weakness to any killer in this entire game is going to be a coordinated team. Just a 4-man. Doesn't even matter if they're even on comms. Just a 4-man that is able to communicate or not and synergize well. It's pretty much over, no matter who you are. And it's ridiculous. It's really ridiculous, but that's just how the game is.
Wrecked me to the point that I'll never forget how bad it was. Like, it happened like months ago, and I'm still thinking about it. Yeah, that's right, I'm looking at you, the Mad Hatter Ace. But with the introduction of new...
I kind of agree with that idea, too. I mean, sheesh, like... it's gotten to a point where, playing the game just really isn't fun. It's gotten to a point where, loading up just playing just one match, I'm walking away either dissatisfied or extremely annoyed. And it's not a good experience for me personally. And I'm somebody who played very consistently. I win very, very, very frequently, which is probably why the MMR skyrocketed over the course of my time. And and I was cool with that. I was like, fine, I'm playing against the toughest teams because I put myself there because I wanted to win, right? I wanted to keep winning over the course of my time, and that's fine. But, when I kind of started to get a bit tired of playing and I wanted to kind of take a step back, coming back to the game, and the first lobby you end up in is like a 4-man sweat squad. It's like, yeah, just never mind. Like, I'm just going to close my game after that one. And that's it. I'm not playing it, So it's definitely something that I think, can be shared across different levels of play, I think. And especially like with the constant, like we're like, I mean, there's a myriad of updates we've gotten that completely have shifted the meta in a way that we really, I gotta say, are going in the wrong direction. Especially with, I mean, I definitely started to see the cracks forming when they did nerf the gen perks for killer side, but didn't adjust anything for the survivor side, so it became a wild west of gen speed just flying at an all-time high, and it still is at an all-time high, even more so now that it got nerfed. And even though they tried to solve the idea, like the issue that there's only four slowdowns being used in every single build, it's still not solving the main problem, and it's still not solving what the main issue really is, and that's obviously going to the fact that they're not going directly to the core of the problem, which is the gen speed is insane, and we have as killer players have to utilize strategies in order to be able to keep up. And then of course the survivor mains like to bitch, complain, and like to claim that it's some kind of exploit or some kind of way of cheating because you're trying to play strategically, when obviously their entire team decided that they wanted to get out of the game as soon as possible. So So what incentive does the killer have to play in the way that they think is fun or think is fair when you're punished for chasing, right? Like, you're punished for a long chase. You're not giving any reward. You're not given any incentive to not go after somebody off of unhook either, because you need somebody out of the game, right? Your chases need to be at least 10 seconds long at the most. Like, you need to be able to down them as soon as possible, and because you need to take into account the travel time from picking up to hook, and then from that hook to the next gen that you need to go ahead and defend. And it's, once you start going against those efficient teams, it just sucks all the fun out of it. You know what I mean? So, like, the main issue ultimately is the direction that behavior is going in. I have to say.
Mechanics like anti-slugging, anti-camping, anti-tunneling, and item buffs like maps working as windows of opportunity and keys being used to read killer's aura, the power of a single survivor just starts to skyrocket. It's no longer a desperate attempt to escape. You're just clowning around with the killer. Now I understand.
Yeah, I completely agree with that point as well. I mean, with each, like, I've noticed this, like, a blatant skyrocketing of survivor strength, like over the course of these months, and over the course of each single patch having a brand new buff to a perk that on survivor that really didn't need one. We've seen this. I keep talking about it. We see it with Resurgence, right? Resurgence, in my opinion, never needed a buff. Was completely fine where it was. It was perfectly mid. Didn't need to be buffed. It wasn't bad. It was just okay. It didn't have to be insane. It was fine. They buffed it up to 70% healing progress. They buffed up Yoichi's perk to give you an additional 30% or something on healing speed. You got another perk that did this. You got another perk that takes hook states. You got another perk that does something else. Vigil got buffed as well when they didn't need it either. Like, it was insane. So my whole point is, like, now we're seeing the anti-strategies, changes coming in. That just makes it even harder and harder and harder. And then, what are you gonna do? It's like they need to change the name of the game at that point. It shouldn't be Dead by Daylight. It should be Survived by the Sunrise, because it literally they're never going to die at that point.
Understand that a lot of people believe the game should favor survivors because most of the player base are survivor mains, and that the only way to keep the player base steady is to raise the power level of each survivor to keep them happy. More escapes equals happier survivors, right? Well, yes, but also no. The game is a 1v4, not a 5v5 like I've seen in other live service games. If one side keeps getting buffs, the other is just going to leave. Just like when the Ghoul came out, remember that? The killer side got so annoyingly intense that the long-standing survivors may just stop playing. Now we might be seeing the same exact thing happen, but on the survivor side. You can't have a 1v4 if no one wants to play as the one. If we lose...
Honestly, these changes are going to reduce the killer numbers, like, even more than before. And honestly, speaking from somebody who's already kind of distanced themselves from playing the game, I would have to completely agree. I've just stepped away from it. I used to play pretty much at least a lot more. I would say maybe once a day, probably. I don't know. It's been so long, it's hard to remember. But I played very frequently, and as time has passed, I've completely shifted past that. I just don't play it at all anymore. Unless it's obviously on stream, but in my free time, no, I am not. I'm not loading up this game at all. It's gotten completely just gruesome to play at this point. It's completely terrible. Just the gen speeds are absolutely astronomically quick. As you guys know, I main the pretty much low tier killers at this point. I mean, it's Ghostface, it's Myers, it's Chucky or whatever have you, and they don't stand a chance, especially with gen speed. Like, you need to, like I've said earlier, you need to down them so fast. And if you just can't, then it's just like, well, I guess I just lose the game, because it's just you just can't keep up with that type of speed. If you're downing somebody within 10 seconds, and and 2 gens are flying, you're like, well, what am I gonna do? Like, half the game's already over by the time I just got it down. Like, they need to make a massive blunder for me to even be able to try to like take a crack at the like mountain of pressure they have now.
Use killer mains, queue times will go up, survivors will get bored, and the killer mains that do stay behind are going to be the most motherless, sweaty bastards you've ever seen. And everyone loses, and no one ate dinner that night. You don't keep a
I agree with that too, honestly. I think that the dedicated killer mains that really want to try to I think that if they really are dedicated, they will try to push through it, and they will try to make sure that the survivors have the worst experience possible. And honestly, you know, if that's the case, hell, I'll probably do some research and try to do the same, you know? You know, because it seems like a good idea at that point, you know? Like, they already have everything we need. Like, the only thing that we can really do in response to at least have some fun is at least try to make it more difficult for them to play. In that sense, you know what I'm saying? In that sense. But either way, let's continue. Obviously. I'm mainly kidding, by the way. I already know some people are going to lose their minds, but in the comments, but it's purely for jokes.
Ship afloat by handing everyone more life jackets. You keep it afloat by patching holes. And right now, it seems like they're giving everyone like a bunch of extra life jackets, and the ship is just heading straight towards an iceberg. Having the killer be stronger isn't bad balance. It's good design. It's what makes Dead by Daylight work. The killer should always be stronger in comparison to a single survivor. It makes each match feel like its own horror movie. Every decision, every action, every move matters. Every gen completed feels earned. And every escape is a moment of pure victory. Not because you were so buff that it was easy, but because you outplayed someone against the odds.
That is the one thing that I enjoy the most about playing Killer, is the idea that you're outsmarting somebody at a tile, that you're trying to... Well, at least I can't say like about Killer, but I will say about chasing Survivor specifically. It's outsmarting them and trying to kind of show, you know, that you're like, you've put in the time and you've learned your character and you've learned their abilities well enough to be able to counter anybody, really. And that in itself I always found interesting. And the thing is that we're going against like these types of survivors that ultimately only care about making the game as easy as humanly possible for themselves. Like, they for some reason are just seeking that kind of gameplay, and we see that a lot when it comes to a lot of the, you know, Killer releases, a lot of with the teams that you go up against that like to bitch about what you use and how you play and stuff like that. And especially you see this with map offerings. Like, they send you to the game, they send you to Eyrie of Crows, they send you to Garden of Joy, they send you to any terribly designed map, and then just pretend as if that's their favorite map. It's like, no, that it's you're trying to make it as easy as possible because you're afraid of challenge, you're afraid of overcoming a struggle, and it's a damn shame, you know. And I honestly, like, I would have to say with that sort of discussion though, is that there's got to be a balance when it comes down to struggle. In that sense, there's got to be some kind of like balance to it. There can be some games you can steamroll, and there can be some games where it's a bit of a struggle, but there's got to be a bit of both so that you can keep yourself engaged. But when you're at least playing Killer in this day and age, and especially probably in the future, it's just going to end up just a constant losing streak all day long, and it's not going to be fun. And that in itself is my main problem, and that's in itself I think is the main issue with the game. And I know that I already probably can assume that the Survivor mains will also lose their minds about even having a statement like this. But we've seen other games that did very well that are also within the genre that, you know, despite the fact that there has been like licensing problems or other things with that, it still worked and it still made the most sense. And at least for me, on the only one, like the main downside I would say with playing Friday the 13th was that you couldn't play as Jason if you wanted to. You had to get lucky. And I've even back then when I played it, I always was like, man, I'd rather play Jason, man. Like, I just thought that'd be way more fun than just walking around the map and looking through drawers. I wanted to actually, you know, like try to land like those little like darts he would throw or whatever they're called. I don't know if they were like little knives or they look like darts or something, but I would want to like try to like land those or like use the variation of Jason and kind of make him work, because he had like they all had different quirks and different abilities and different ways that they like different recharging like rates and weapons and different like killing animations, and I wanted to try to like, you know, master some, and like I always thought that was interesting. And you know, if you were like basically getting killed by Tommy Johnson every single match, I don't think anybody would want to keep playing that, especially to try to even be as Jason. They would just probably want to just not do that. You know, like I remember when I was on a team where we actually did kill Jason, and it was amazing. You know, like being able to do that, it was crazy that you could set that up. And I found that it was great that as a team you could work together. And then it was like it didn't happen every match. It was super rare, and it was something that you had to work towards. And it's great that that's the case. You know what I mean? But you know, that is pretty much all I have to really add to this. Thank you guys for watching. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Sheesh. But yeah, let me know what you guys think in the comments. But yeah, check out the other videos. Support with the links in the description. Follow on Twitch to watch me play Kill Live, and I'll see you guys in the next one.